my goodness, look at that. Who let them in here?
The chandeliers of Bellagio Prime sparkled like constellations trapped inside glass. Golden lights spilled over velvet booths and pristine white tablecloths. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a kingdom where only the wealthy belonged, where the scent of aged wine and expensive perfume clung to the air. And tonight, everyone inside felt untouchable. Until she walked in. A soft chime announced the opening of the grand mahogany door. The hostess glanced up, expecting a diamond-draped socialite or a politician's wife. Instead, a young woman stepped hesitantly inside. She clutched a small purse against her chest, her white blouse gently worn at the sleeves, her navy skirt simple and unadorned. Her blonde hair was tied neatly into a ponytail. No curls, no salon gloss, just honesty held with an elastic band. Her presence did not belong in Bellagio Prime. And the room reacted like an immune system, sensing an intruder. Heads turned. Eyebrows lifted. Whispers floated. Who is she? Is she lost? She looks like a nanny. A trio of women at a nearby table leaned closer, their voices disguised behind crystal glasses. She must have wandered in accidentally, one murmured with a smirk. No, look at her, she's here on purpose, another said, pathetic. Probably here to serve someone, the third added, laughing softly. The woman, Adele, tried to steady her breathing. She had almost canceled this blind date. Almost turned back at the valet stand when he looked at her clothes with thinly veiled disgust. But she had promised her roommate she'd try. So she walked to the maitre d's podium, her voice soft but steady. I'm here for a reservation, under Alan Hale. The maitre d' blinked. Then blinked again. He looked her up and down, twice, before forcing a professional smile. This is the VIP section, he said slowly. Private bookings only. The tone was polite. The disbelief was not. Adele swallowed, cheeks warming. I know, he asked me to meet him here. A long pause. Then the maitre d' checked the list, and his expression faltered. Oh, you are on the list. He stepped aside stiffly, gesturing to a candle-lit table beside the tall windows. It was one of the most expensive seats in the restaurant. A few people actually gaped. Adele walked carefully, each step echoing in the enormous room. Her modest heels tapped louder than the live piano. Louder than her heartbeat. She sat. She breathed. She tried to ignore the whispers. And that was when it happened. A blur of pink flashed by. Small footsteps slapped against the polished floor, fast, urgent, out of place in this temple of quiet luxury. A little girl, no older than 5, rushed across the dining room. She wore a bright pink dress, her hair tied into 2 bouncing pigtails with white ribbons. Her eyes, big, brown, and overflowing with emotion, locked onto Adele the moment she entered. Then, before anyone could react, the girl climbed onto the chair next to Adele, threw her tiny arms around her neck, and whispered in a trembling voice that shattered the room. Mom! The restaurant froze. A waiter dropped a fork. A man half standing at the bar lowered his glass midair. The trio of socialites gasped audibly. From across the room, near the private entrance, a tall man in a charcoal suit stiffened. Alan Hale, CEO, billionaire innovator, and tonight's blind date, turned slowly. His eyes widened as the little girl clung tighter, sobbing into the stunned woman's blouse. Mommy, is it really you? You could hear a heartbeat drop. Because the child, now clinging to Adele's neck, was Alan's daughter. And Alan, the notoriously composed man, looked like the ground had vanished beneath him. Adele's past more dramatic, more painful. To understand why the universe twisted the night this way. You must understand who Adele truly was. Adele had never belonged in wealthy circles. She'd been a nanny since she was 19, not because she lacked ambition, but because children made sense to her in a world where adults always seemed to disappoint. Kids never cared about money or status or appearances. They cared about kindness. She lived in a cramped, one-bedroom apartment on the second floor of a building that smelled permanently of old carpet. Her neighbors fought loudly. The elevator never worked. But it was her home. She bought her clothes secondhand. She rode buses instead of taxis. She worked double shifts and volunteered at a children's shelter on weekends. She gave more love than she ever received. Her last relationship ended cruelly. His wealthy parents sat her down, offered her money to leave, and said, "Our son needs a wife, not a nanny." She left that day with a broken heart and a burning promise to never step into a world that mocked her again. But her roommate insisted. "You need to live again. Let someone see you." So Adele agreed, once to a blind date. She had never expected a CEO. She had never expected his daughter. She had never expected her world to tilt. Alan's world cracked in places no one sees. At 35, Alan Hale was the kind of man people bowed to. Not intentionally, just instinctively. He was polished steel and sharp intelligence. A man who rebuilt a dying company into an empire. But success had teeth. It had taken his time, his youth, his joy. And worst of all, it had taken his wife. 3 years ago, she died suddenly. His world collapsed quietly. He never cried in public. He never dated again. He ran his company, raised his daughter, and built walls around his heart so high no one dared climb them. Except someone had been climbing without him noticing. His daughter, Anna, the little girl now clinging to Adele, had spent the last year staring at the door as if waiting for someone who would never return. Until today. The confrontation, now more dramatic. Alan reached the table in long, urgent strides. "What did you do to my daughter?" he demanded, voice low, lethal, protective. Adele's breath stumbled. "I didn't do anything, I swear." Anna began crying harder. "Daddy, stop. That's Mommy. She came back, she came back." Gasps rippled across the room. The entire restaurant leaned in, not even pretending to hide their fascination. One of the socialite women whispered loudly. "I knew she was trying to trap him." Adele flinched. Alan stiffened, not because he believed them, but because his daughter's cries were shredding him from the inside. He looked at Adele, then at his daughter, then back at Adele. He spoke through clenched teeth. "We need to talk." The explanation, he doesn't believe her yet. They moved to a private corner. Anna refused to let go of Adele's hand. Adele's voice trembled but remained steady. "I'm not her mother. I would never lie to a child. I didn't expect her here. I didn't even know you had a daughter." Alan's eyes narrowed. "Then why does she think you're her mother?" Adele inhaled shakily. "Because I volunteer at a children's shelter," she whispered. "Years ago there was a little girl, blonde, brown eyes, always wearing pink. She was abandoned. I cared for her until she was adopted." She swallowed hard. "Your daughter, she looks like her, acts like her. She reminds me of someone I never got to say goodbye to." Alan's jaw tightened. He wanted to believe her. But his life had taught him skepticism. Anna tugged his sleeve, voice cracking. "Daddy, please let her stay. Just tonight, please." Alan exhaled slowly, heavily. He returned to the table, pulled out the chair, looked at Adele, and in a voice barely above a whisper, "Stay. If you leave now, it will break her." The room watches and drama boils. The restaurant fell into stunned disbelief. The pianist missed a note. Whispers exploded like wildfire. Adele sat. Anna curled into her side, as if she'd belonged there forever. Then the cruelty came. Sharp, ugly, open. A diamond-drenched woman stood up, voice dripping venom. A nanny pretending to be a mother, she sneered. How pathetic. A ripple of laughter followed. Adele froze. Alan stood. His voice thundered across the restaurant. That's enough. Silence. Cold, electric. She made my daughter smile again, he continued tightly. She made her feel safe, something no one here has been able to do in years. The socialite sank into her seat. The entire restaurant bowed their heads. Adele stared at Alan, stunned. And in that moment, something inside him cracked. Alan did not sleep that night. Not even for a minute. After leaving Bellagio Prime, after carrying Anna to her room, after brushing her hair back as she whispered Adele's name in her sleep, he sat alone in his study, surrounded by shadows and quiet wounds. His house was large enough to swallow loneliness whole. And it often did. Tonight it felt even colder. The glow from his laptop lit the dark room as he scrolled through files he hadn't opened in years. Old Nanny applications. His hand froze on one. Adele Rowan. Her photo was simple, hair tied back, plain shirt, eyes honest. Nothing glamorous. Nothing elite. Next to her profile, a note. Rejected by assistant, lacks polished public image, not suitable for CEO's daughter. Alan stared at the words until the letters blurred. The realization hit him like a punch. He never saw her application. He never had the chance to choose her. Because someone else decided she was good enough. Someone else decided image mattered more than heart. More than kindness. More than compatibility with his grieving child. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tight, chest heavy. If Adele had been hired, would Anna have smiled sooner? Would she have healed faster? Would they already have been a family? The guilt pressed deeper. He grabbed his phone before he could second-guess himself. After 3 rings, a soft, cautious voice answered. Hello. Adele, he said quietly. It's me, Alan. A beat of silence. Is everything all right? She asked, concern lacing her words. Yes, he murmured. No, not really. He exhaled. I owe you an apology. For what? She asked. For rejecting you 2 years ago. For not knowing you applied. For letting someone else judge you based on things that never mattered. Another pause. Then her soft whisper. You didn't know. I should have, he said firmly. I'm sorry. Adele didn't speak for a moment. Then, quietly, hesitantly. Do you need something? Yes, he admitted. My daughter hasn't stopped asking for you. Emotion tugged at her voice. I'll come by. And she did. The visit, drama, explodes into something else. Alan opened the front door just as Adele reached the steps. Before either adult could speak. Before nerves or logic could intervene. A shrill, tiny voice pierced the air. Mommy! Anna, in her pink pajamas, flew past her father and barreled straight into Adele's legs. Adele dropped to her knees instinctively, sweeping the girl into her arms. And the dam broke. Mommy, don't leave me again, Anna cried, small hands cupping Adele's cheeks. Please don't go, please don't go. Adele's throat tightened violently. All the composure she'd carried in fell apart. I'm here, sweetheart, she whispered, voice shaking. I'm not going anywhere. Alan stood in the doorway, frozen. Watching his daughter cling to this woman, as if she'd been waiting her whole life for her. Watching Adele hold her, as if something long lost had finally been returned. Something shifted inside him. Something undeniable. Not romantic. Not yet. But deep. Instinctive. A seed of truth he couldn't unsee. Anna needed Adele. And some part of him whispered, so did he. The park incident, now with full cinematic drama. A week later, at his sister's insistence, Alan invited Adele to join them for a calm afternoon at the park. Nothing fancy. Nothing dramatic. Just normal. But normal never lasts in a story like theirs. The park was bright, filled with weekend laughter. Children ran freely. Parents chatted. Birds pecked at crumbs near benches. Anna skipped ahead, waving her arms excitedly. Adele held a small bag of crackers, smiling as the child pulled on her skirt every few seconds. Alan walked beside them, hands in pockets, sleeves rolled up. The most relaxed Adele had ever seen him. But peace fractures fast. A sudden bark. Loud, sharp, violent. Cut through the air. A large German shepherd broke free from its leash, barreling across the field. Children screamed. Parents shouted. Anna turned toward the sound, her tiny body freezing in fear. Her face went blank. The same look she had the day her mother died. Adele shouted her name. But fear drove Anna blindly backward. Straight toward the street. A horn blared. A car skidded. Alan ran. Dust and terror exploded in the air as he lunged, arms outstretched. He grabbed Anna just as her foot slipped off the curb. He twisted his body, shielding her. They both fell hard onto the grass. The world slowed. Adele sprinted toward them. Anna sobbed into Alan's chest as his arms held her tight, unmoving. "You're okay," he whispered, voice cracked. "You're okay, I've got you." Only when Adele reached them did he finally breathe. He handed Anna over slowly, delicately, as if passing a piece of his soul. The child curled into Adele's neck instantly. Alan watched, chest rising and falling rapidly. Then, in a voice raw with truth he never meant to reveal, "She's safe because her mother is here." Adele froze. Not because of the word, but because of the way he said it. He wasn't confused, or mistaken, or speaking to comfort his daughter. He was speaking a truth he had finally stopped fighting. They locked eyes, and for a single, suspended heartbeat, the world recognized them. A trio, a unit, a family in the making. The public humiliation, drama intensified. The next day, paparazzi photos began circulating online. Someone at Bellagio Prime had snapped pictures. The headlines were vicious. CEO seen dining with nanny, daughter calls her mom. Gold digger targets billionaire and child. Mystery woman manipulates grieving CEO. Adele's phone buzzed endlessly. Threats. Insults. Mockery. Strangers spat venom with the confidence of cowards. Alan rushed to her apartment as soon as he saw the articles. When he arrived, she was sitting on the floor hugging her knees, phone face down beside her. He sat beside her silently. She whispered, "I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be mocked again." He clenched his fists. "I'll shut it down, I'll protect you." She shook her head. "You can't protect me from the whole world, Alan." He met her eyes fierce. "I can try." The breakup now even more heart-shattering. But the damage had already started. The next morning, Adele arrived at Alan's home with her coat over her arm. Anna ran down the stairs the second she saw her. "Mommy, mommy." But Adele knelt, tears trembling behind her eyes. "I can't stay," she whispered. Everything in the room stopped. Alan's face changed instantly. "Why?" His voice was sharp with fear. Adele swallowed. I don't belong in your world. People mocked me, mocked your daughter, and it's only going to get worse. You don't need their approval, Alan said urgently. You have mine, you have Anna. Tears finally spilled down Adele's cheeks. And that's exactly why I need to leave. I won't be the reason she gets bullied. I won't have your daughter hurt because of me. Anna climbed into Adele's lap, sobbing. Don't go, please don't go. Adele held her tightly, her heart breaking with every tiny breath. I'm not good enough to be your mommy, she whispered. Anna wailed, clinging desperately. Alan stepped closer. Adele, don't do this, don't walk away. But she stood, trembling. I have to. She kissed Anna's forehead, turned, and walked into the rain. Alan followed her outside, voice rough. Adele, stop, come back. She didn't. The bus arrived. The doors closed. She disappeared into the fog. Alan stood in the storm until he was soaked to the bone. Inside his chest, a hole reopened that he thought had healed. Anna's collapse, the dramatic breaking point. That night, Anna wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak, wouldn't lift her head. By dawn, her small body burned with fever. Alan rushed her to the emergency room, panic tearing through him. Machines beeped. Nurses hurried. He sat beside her bed, gripping her tiny hand. What's wrong with her? He demanded. The doctor spoke gently. She's dehydrated, and her body is responding to extreme emotional distress. Something broke her spirit. Alan closed his eyes. He knew exactly what. He pressed his forehead to Anna's hand. Adele, he whispered brokenly. Please, please come back. The hospital, their fates collide again. When the door burst open. When Adele rushed in breathless, as if her soul had been running long before her feet. Alan felt his world stutter. She fell to her knees beside the bed. Anna, she whispered, voice trembling, Mommy's here, I'm right here. The little girl stirred. Eyelids fluttered. She blinked weakly. Mommy. Adele broke. Yes, baby, I'm here. I'm not leaving again. Anna sat up and threw her arms around her neck. Adele hugged her so tight it looked like she was trying to hold her heart inside her body. Alan stepped forward slowly. Adele. His voice was raw, unsteady, human. She looked up. He reached for her hand. You don't need to be perfect, he said softly. You don't need wealth or the right clothes or the approval of strangers. His eyes glistened. You just have to stay, so we can finally be a family. Adele stared at him, breath caught. And for the first time, she didn't pull away. She nodded. I'll stay. Anna's fever broke by sunrise. The doctors stepped out quietly, leaving the room wrapped in a soft hush. The little girl had fallen asleep curled against Adele's chest, tiny fingers still clutching her blouse, even in dreams refusing to let go. Adele gently stroked her hair, tears still shining at the corners of her eyes. Alan watched them from the doorway. Exhaustion weighed on his shoulders, dark circles carved beneath his eyes, but something else lived there too. Relief. And a fear that still hadn't left him since the night she walked away. He stepped into the room, dragging a chair closer. You stayed, he whispered. Adele looked up, her voice soft but steady. You asked me to. He swallowed. No, you stayed because she needed you. She held his gaze. And what about you, Alan? Did you need me too? The question hung in the air like a trembling heartbeat. He didn't answer with words. He answered by looking at her, the way a lonely man looks at sunrise after years of night. Recovery and an unexpected storm. Anna recovered quickly after Adele returned. Within 2 days she was back home, wrapped in her pink blanket, drawing messy hearts with crayons. Adele stayed, but the world outside didn't forget. The photos, the gossip, the online headlines calling her a gold digger, a manipulator, a fake mother. Alan tried to shut the press down, but rumors spread like wildfire. And then came the storm. One afternoon, when Adele picked Anna up from school, a group of wealthy mothers waited near the gates, arms crossed, manicured nails tapping, perfume thick in the air. One stepped forward, a tall woman with ruby lipstick and a sharp smile. "You're the nanny pretending to be a mother, aren't you?" Adele stiffened. "I'm here to pick up Anna." Another chimed in. "You know, it's cruel to confuse a child like that." "She needs stability," a third added louder. "Not some poor girl trying to climb social ladders." Adele's throat tightened. She grabbed Anna's hand, murmuring, "Let's go." But the leader stepped into her path, voice dripping venom. "Sooner or later the truth will come out. You're not good enough for her, and you never will be." Adele didn't respond. She simply walked away. But Anna heard every word. That night she climbed into Adele's lap at bedtime, laying her head against her chest. "Mommy, are you leaving again?" The tremble in her voice cracked Adele's heart. "No, sweetheart," she whispered, stroking her hair. "I'm not going anywhere." Her tears fell silently into Anna's curls. In the doorway unseen, Alan watched them both. And something inside him snapped. The boardroom war, Alan takes a stand. The next morning, Alan called an executive meeting, one that would make headlines for weeks. His board members sat stiffly around the polished mahogany table, murmuring among themselves. At the head of the table, Alan placed both hands on the surface and spoke with cold, powerful clarity. "Anyone in this room who feels my relationship with Adele is a liability," he said, "can consider themselves free to resign, today." A hush fell. One man nervously cleared his throat. "Sir, the investors will follow the company's performance," Alan snapped, "not my personal life." Another woman whispered, "The press is still active." Alan's gaze hardened. "And they will continue to be. But I will not allow anyone to degrade the woman my daughter considers a mother." Silence, shock, respect, and something else. Fear. Alan had never raised his voice in a board meeting before. But this was different. This was personal. A night on the rooftop, softness after the storm. That evening, Alan invited Adele to the rooftop garden of his home. The city glowed around them, skyscrapers twinkling like scattered stars. A gentle breeze brushed their faces. Adele leaned on the railing, arms crossed lightly. "You didn't have to defend me like that," she murmured. "Yes," Alan replied quietly, "I did." She turned. "Why?" He stepped closer, breath warm in the cool air. "Because you are not a rumor, not a headline, not a mistake." Her heart thudded. He walked until he stood beside her, the city stretching beneath them like a universe too vast for their small but powerful moment. "You healed my daughter," he said softly. "You healed me." Adele's breath caught. "Alan." He reached out slow, hesitant, and brushed a strand of her hair back. His fingers lingered near her cheek. "I don't want you to go," he whispered. "Not again." Adele closed her eyes. "Aren't you afraid?" she whispered. "Of what?" "That I'll be too much trouble, that I won't fit into your world." He moved closer still, voice low. "You fit into our hearts, that's what matters." The wind whispered through the garden. Adele looked up into his eyes. And for the first time since her heart was broken years ago, she let herself believe. The proposal, a dramatic, tearful, impossibly beautiful moment. 1 year later, the garden behind the Hale estate was transformed into a fairy tale. White roses lined the aisle. Candles flickered in lanterns. Soft classical music drifted through the warm golden evening. Only close friends and family attended, those who had watched grief turn to growth, loneliness to laughter, fear to love. Adele stood near the altar in a gown that shimmered like moonlight, simple, elegant, breathtaking. Her blonde curls cascaded down her shoulders. But nothing compared to her eyes, filled with peace, joy, and a love she never imagined she'd find. Across the garden, Anna skipped down the aisle, her pink dress fluttering like a blossom caught in the breeze. She carried a small satin pillow with 2 rings placed neatly on top. She beamed at her mother, her real mother, in every way that mattered. Alan stood at the altar, wearing a tailored suit and the softest smile Adele had ever seen. When she reached him, he took her hands, thumb brushing over her knuckles. "You ready?" he asked gently. She smiled through tears. "I've been ready since the day your daughter climbed into my lap," she whispered. The guests laughed softly. Alan's voice grew thick with emotion. "You walked into a room full of people waiting to see you fail," he said. "But you left that same room as the woman who saved my family." Adele blinked rapidly. "And you," she whispered, "are the man who taught me that love doesn't come from wealth, but from courage." Anna tugged both their hands. "Can I say something?" Everyone turned. Adele knelt. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Anna took a deep breath. "When Mommy came into the restaurant that night, I knew," she said softly. "I just knew she was ours." Tears fell. From Adele, from Alan, from nearly everyone watching. Anna grinned. "Now Daddy smiles again, Mommy stays, and I'm not alone anymore." Alan lifted her up and kissed her forehead. "You were never alone," he whispered. The officiant cleared his throat, smiling. With the vows exchanged and the rings presented, he looked at Alan and Adele. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Cheers filled the garden as they kissed. A kiss soft, full of gratitude, healing, and every emotion they'd been too afraid to feel before. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fairytale royalty. It wasn't about fitting into society's expectations. It was raw. It was real. It was theirs. The reception, a final dramatic touch. At the reception, music played softly under strings of glowing lights. Guests laughed and danced. But one small moment outshone all the rest. The group of wealthy women who once mocked Adele stood awkwardly near the side, clutching champagne glasses. Their eyes followed her. The nanny they once dismissed. Now the wife of one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. One whispered under her breath, "Who could have imagined?" But another corrected her quietly. "It's not surprising at all. Some women carry more grace in a simple ponytail than others do in diamonds." Adele didn't notice. She was too busy laughing as Anna smeared frosting on Alan's cheek. Too busy being loved. Too busy being home. The final scene, a family complete. Later, under the canopy of fairy lights, Adele sat in a garden chair with Anna asleep in her lap. Her curls rested against Adele's chest. Alan stood behind them, one arm around Adele's shoulders, the other hand resting gently on Anna's head. He leaned down and whispered, "You know, the first time I saw you, I was terrified." Adele laughed softly. "Of me?" "No," he said warmly. "Of how much I needed you." She looked up at him. "And now?" He kissed her forehead. "Now I know I was right." Adele looked down at the sleeping child in her arms. The little girl who once ran across a restaurant floor, calling her mom. She whispered, "They called me a poor nanny." Alan squeezed her shoulder. "But our daughter called you Mom," he finished. Adele smiled softly, tears gathering. "And that's all I will ever need to be." The camera of fate zoomed out. the lights glowing softly, the garden alive with warmth, a family nestled together like a completed chapter, and a brand new beginning waiting to be written.